London, a city of tradition, wealth, and ceremony, where fortunes are made, reputations polished, and secrets kept. But over the past 2 decades, something changed. London became the preferred destination for a new kind of elite, Russian oligarchs, men forged in the chaos of post-Soviet collapse, made rich through privatization, loyal or bound to Vladimir Putin. They didn't arrive quietly. They came in private jets, with fleets of lawyers, and briefcases full of cash. They bought football clubs, newspapers, mansions, and for the most part, nobody asked where the money came from. This is the story of how Putin's oligarchs bought London, and how London, it seems, was happy to be bought. In the early 1990s, the Soviet Union collapsed. The result wasn't democracy, it was chaos. Factories were privatized, oil fields auctioned off, banks gutted, and in the confusion, a few well-connected men seized everything. They became billionaires almost overnight. But in Russia, enormous wealth came with enormous risk. There were assassinations, gang wars, and eventually a new president, Vladimir Putin, who made it clear, your money was safe, so long as your loyalty was unquestioned. Some chose exile, but they didn't want to hide in bunkers. They wanted comfort, security, legacy. Enter London. The UK offered golden visas to anyone willing to invest. Buy a few government bonds, purchase some property, maybe hire a discreet PR firm. Suddenly, you're not a Russian oligarch. You're a British resident, a patron of the arts, a member of the club. Over the following 2 decades, Russian citizens would invest over £27 billion in the United Kingdom. But this wasn't just about money. It was about transformation, legitimacy, and power. No one symbolized this transformation better than Roman Abramovich. In 2003, he bought Chelsea Football Club for about $40 million. He poured in cash, signed superstars, and brought the club to global fame. Chelsea fans adored him. He was the oligarch with the golden touch, a quiet figure, rarely giving interviews, almost never appearing in public. But behind the scenes, Abramovich was no mystery. He had made his fortune in oil during Russia's privatization frenzy, acquiring vast state assets at a fraction of their worth. He had ties to Boris Yeltsin, and later, Vladimir Putin. Beyond football, Abramovich's London empire was vast. He purchased 16 Kensington Palace Gardens, a 15-bedroom mansion, for $120 million. His spending epitomized a pattern that would repeat hundreds of times across London's most exclusive neighborhoods. In legal filings, he once admitted, the deals that made him rich were legal, but immoral. Yet in London, no one seemed to care. He was rich. He was generous. He won football matches. What else mattered? Evgeny Lebedev took a different route. He didn't buy a football club. He bought influence. The son of a former KGB agent turned billionaire media mogul, Lebedev arrived in London with style. He bought the Evening Standard, then the Independent. He threw lavish parties at his converted castle outside the city. British politicians, including Boris Johnson, became regular guests. Lebedev was charming, cosmopolitan. He championed liberal causes, posed for photos with celebrities, and cultivated an image of a worldly philanthropist. But his connections ran deep. His father, Alexander Lebedev, had spent years as a spy in London for the KGB. British intelligence officials were uneasy. Still, in 2010, Boris Johnson nominated Evgeny for a peerage. Despite security warnings, he became Lord Lebedev of Hampton and Siberia. Yes, Siberia, the son of a Russian spy, now sitting in the House of Lords. This wasn't an isolated case. Across London, Russian money was buying not just property, but access to the very heart of British power. Behind the parties and football matches was a quieter transformation. Russian money flowed into London real estate, shell companies, and trusts. It bought art, townhouses, and political donations. But unlike other forms of investment, this money came cloaked in secrecy. Law firms specialized in creating offshore entities that obscured ownership. Luxury flats in Belgravia and Knightsbridge were registered to companies in the British Virgin Islands or the Isle of Man. Transparency International estimates that at least 150 properties worth 1.5 billion pounds are owned by Russians accused of corruption or with links to the Kremlin. But the true figure is likely much higher, hidden behind layers of financial opacity. Consider Polina Kovaleva, daughter of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Despite being a 26-year-old student with no obvious income source, she purchased a ground-floor flat in Kensington for $5.5 million in cash in 2016. You could walk down a London street filled with $10 million mansions and not know who owned a single one. For the UK's financial services industry, it was a gold rush. Lawyers, bankers, accountants, all earned fees, all kept quiet. In some cases, journalists who tried to expose these arrangements were met with lawsuits, libel threats, funded by the very oligarchs they were investigating. For years, this arrangement held. The oligarchs got safety. London got money. Then, in February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Suddenly, silence became complicity. The UK government scrambled. Roman Abramovich was sanctioned. His assets, including Chelsea Football Club, were frozen. He tried to sell, but it was too late. The government passed the Economic Crime Bill, demanding transparency over foreign-owned property and cracking down on shell companies. Reforms that had been delayed for years were rushed through in days. Today, billions of pounds worth of Russian-owned London property sits frozen in time. London Mayor Sadiq Khan has called for 1.1 billion worth of oligarch property to be seized and sold to fund 4,000 new homes, including housing for Ukrainian refugees. But much of the damage was already done. The properties were bought, the reputations whitewashed, the influence entrenched. In hindsight, it was never just about the money. It was about what the money bought. It bought silence. It bought access. It bought status. Russian oligarchs didn't just want homes. They wanted to be accepted, absorbed into the fabric of British life. And for a price, they were. London's elite institutions, its clubs, its newspapers, its political parties, became complicit, not because they were coerced, but because they were paid. The story reveals uncomfortable truths about how Western financial systems can be exploited by authoritarian wealth. For 2 decades, the UK prioritized economic benefits over scrutiny of money sources, allowing London to become what some critics called the most corrupt country in the world. When the reckoning came, it was too late. Billions had already moved through the system, and some of it remains, protected by lawyers and loopholes. New transparency requirements now demand that foreign companies owning UK property reveal their true owners. But critics argue these measures came too late and remain insufficient, because even now, despite the outrage, the infrastructure is still in place. This isn't just a story about Russia. It's a story about Britain and the cost of looking away. When money is worshipped and power is for sale, democracy becomes something ornamental, beautiful to look at, but hollow underneath. As Russian billionaires have been forced out, American and other international billionaires have moved in, spending an estimated $800 million on London's super-prime property market. The cycle continues, raising questions about whether London has truly learned from the Londongrad era or simply found new sources of questionable wealth. Putin's oligarchs didn't invade London. They were invited, and that invitation tells us more about who we are than who they were.